My daughter-in-law changed the locks on my house and told me, "This house isn't yours anymore, Eleanor." She had no idea that trying to steal my house would trigger the most expensive legal mistake of her life. My name is Eleanor Blackwood, and I'm 72 years old. My late husband Charles left me a $2 million Victorian mansion and several other properties when he died 3 years ago. My son Michael married Brittany Hayes 2 years ago. She was 29, beautiful, and had calculating eyes that saw dollar signs when she looked at our family. Last Tuesday, I returned from grocery shopping to find my key didn't work. Brittany opened the door with a smug smile. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" "I live here, Brittany." "Actually, you don't live here anymore. This house belongs to me now." She showed me legal documents with my forged signature, giving her power of attorney over all my assets. "I never signed these papers. These papers say otherwise. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay." "Where is Michael?" "Michael supports my decision to manage the family assets more efficiently." This woman had stolen my house and was talking about efficiency. "Brittany, I'm not going anywhere. This is my house." "Not anymore. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll call the police for trespassing." Trespassing. In my own house. I realized Brittany had been planning this theft from the moment she met Michael. She had played the loving daughter-in-law while gathering information to forge documents and steal my life's work. But Brittany had made one crucial mistake. She didn't know that Charles had built legal protections into our properties that would destroy anyone who tried to steal them. Legal landmines that would cost her far more than she could ever take from me. "Fine, Brittany. I'll leave for now. But you should know that this house isn't just a house." "What do you mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." I walked back to my car, knowing that Brittany was watching from my own front door, thinking she had won. What she didn't know was that she had just activated a legal trap that would cost her everything she owned, plus $500,000 more. By the time I was finished with her, Brittany would wish she had never heard the name Blackwood. She was about to learn why my husband always said, "Never try to steal from a lawyer's widow." I drove straight to my lawyer's office, my hands shaking with rage. Patricia Morrison had been Charles's law partner for 20 years and had handled our estate planning. If anyone could help me understand what Brittany had done, it was her. "Eleanor, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her the documents Brittany had shown me. "My daughter-in-law just locked me out of my own house with these." Patricia studied the papers, her expression growing darker with each page. "Eleanor, these are very sophisticated forgeries. The letterhead is correct, the legal language is proper, but I never prepared these documents." "So they're fake?" "Completely fake. But they're good fakes. Someone put real effort into making these look authentic." "What do they actually say?" "According to these documents, you signed over power of attorney to Brittany Hayes, giving her complete control over all your assets. The house, the rental properties, your investment accounts, everything." My worst fears were confirmed. Brittany hadn't just stolen my house, she had tried to steal my entire fortune. "Patricia, I need to ask you something. Do the protections Charles built into our properties still exist?" Patricia's eyes lit up with understanding. "You mean the theft deterrent clauses?" "Yes." "Oh, Eleanor, those clauses are still very much in effect. If someone tries to fraudulently claim ownership of your properties, what happens? They become liable for triple damages plus legal fees. We're talking about a minimum penalty of $500,000, possibly more." I felt the first spark of satisfaction I'd experienced since finding my locks changed. "And the criminal charges? Forgery, fraud, elder abuse, identity theft. Brittany could be looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. How long before the clauses activate? The moment she tries to take any legal action based on those forged documents. If she's already changed the locks and claimed ownership, the process has already begun." I smiled for the first time that day. Charles had been a brilliant lawyer, and he'd protected me even after death. But I needed to understand the full scope of Brittany's plan before I destroyed her. "Patricia, I need you to do something for me. I need to know exactly what Brittany has been doing with those documents." "What do you mean?" I need to know if she's contacted real estate agents, banks, insurance companies. I need to know how far this fraud goes. Patricia made several phone calls while I waited. With each conversation, her expression grew more serious. Eleanor, this is worse than we thought. Brittany contacted 3 different real estate agents yesterday. She's planning to sell your house. What? She told them she's the new owner and wants to put it on the market immediately. She's asking for a quick sale at below market value. How much below market value? $1.5 million. She's willing to take a $500,000 loss for a fast sale. I realized with horror that Brittany wasn't planning to live in my house. She was planning to sell it quickly and disappear with the money before anyone discovered the fraud. There's more, Patricia continued. She's also contacted your bank about accessing your investment accounts. My investment accounts? She tried to use the forged power of attorney to gain access to your portfolio. The bank flagged it for review, but she scheduled another meeting for tomorrow. The full scope of Brittany's theft was becoming clear. She wasn't just stealing my house, she was trying to liquidate my entire estate and disappear. Patricia, how much money are we talking about total? Between the house, the rental properties, and your investment accounts. About $4 million. $4 million. Brittany was trying to steal my entire life's work. Eleanor, we need to act fast. If she manages to sell the house to a cash buyer before we can stop her, recovering it will be much more complicated. I stood up, feeling a cold determination settle over me. Patricia, I want you to activate every single protection Charles built into our properties. I want Brittany to face the maximum penalties under the law. Eleanor, are you sure? Once we activate those clauses, there's no going back. Brittany will owe you hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. Good. Maybe that will teach other gold diggers not to steal from widows. What about Michael? He's going to be caught in the middle of this. I thought about my son, who was probably at work right now with no idea that his wife was a criminal. Michael made his choice when he married her. He's about to learn what kind of woman he brought into our family. Patricia began making calls to activate the legal protections while I sat there planning my next move. Brittany thought she was so clever, forging documents and stealing my home while I was out grocery shopping. She had no idea that she was walking into a legal trap that would destroy her financially and send her to prison. But I wasn't satisfied with just legal consequences. I wanted Brittany to be publicly humiliated the same way she had humiliated me by locking me out of my own house. Patricia, I have an idea. What if we let Brittany think she's succeeding? What do you mean? What if we let her bring the real estate agents and potential buyers to the house? What if we let her get to the closing table before we spring the trap? Eleanor, that's risky. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. But this way, when Brittany's fraud is exposed, it will be in front of witnesses, real estate agents, buyers, bank representatives. Everyone will know what she tried to do. You want to humiliate her publicly. I want her to experience the same shock and embarrassment she put me through, but multiplied by 1,000. Patricia smiled grimly. Your husband would be proud. This is exactly the kind of strategy he would have used. Then let's do it. Let Brittany dig her hole deeper while we prepare to bury her in it. I left Patricia's office with a plan that would give Brittany enough rope to hang herself with. She wanted to steal my house and sell it quickly? Fine. I'd let her try. But when she brought buyers to my front door, she was going to discover that trying to steal from Eleanor Blackwood was the most expensive mistake of her life. By the time I was finished with her, Brittany would lose everything she owned and spend the next decade paying off the damages she owed me. And it would all happen in front of an audience of real estate professionals who would make sure everyone in town knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Brittany thought she had outsmarted an old woman. She was about to learn that this old woman had been married to the smartest lawyer in the state. And Charles had taught me very well. That evening, I called Michael from my hotel room. Mom? Brittany said you moved out. What's going on? Michael, I need to ask you something very important. Did you know that Brittany has power of attorney over all my assets? What? No, of course not. Why would she need power of attorney? Because she forged documents giving herself control of my house, my rental properties, and my investment accounts. She locked me out of my own house this morning. There was a long silence. Mom, That's impossible. Brittany wouldn't do something like that. Michael, she's planning to sell my house tomorrow. She's already contacted real estate agents. There has to be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. Your wife is a thief, and she's been planning this since the day she met you. Mom, I think you're confused. Maybe you should see a doctor. I realized with a sinking heart that Brittany had already been working on Michael, probably telling him that I was getting senile or confused. Michael, I'm not confused. Your wife is a criminal, and in a few days you're going to find out exactly what kind of woman you married. I hung up before he could respond. My own son didn't believe me. Brittany had poisoned him against me so thoroughly that he thought I was losing my mind. But that was going to change very soon. When Brittany's fraud was exposed in front of witnesses, Michael would have to face the truth about his wife. The next morning, I received a call from Patricia. Eleanor, Brittany has scheduled a showing of your house for this afternoon. She's bringing 2 potential buyers and their real estate agent. Perfect. Is everything in place? Everything's ready. The moment she presents those forged documents as proof of ownership, the theft deterrent clauses will be fully activated. What about the criminal charges? I've already contacted the district attorney's office. They'll have investigators ready to move the moment we give them the signal. And the damages she'll owe me? Based on the current market value of your properties and the extent of the fraud, she'll be liable for approximately $750,000 in triple damages plus legal fees. $750,000. Brittany was about to learn that stealing from the wrong person could cost more than she could ever repay. Eleanor, there's one more thing. Michael called my office this morning. What did he want? He wanted to know if there was any truth to what you told him about Brittany. I think he's starting to have doubts. Good. Maybe when this is over, I'll still have a son. Eleanor, are you ready for this? Once we spring this trap, there's no going back. I thought about Brittany standing in my doorway, smiling smugly as she told me my house wasn't mine anymore. I thought about the humiliation of being locked out of my own home, of having my own son think I was losing my mind. I'm ready, Patricia. Let's show Brittany Hayes what happens when you try to steal from a lawyer's widow. As I hung up the phone, I felt a cold satisfaction settle over me. Brittany thought she had won. She thought she had successfully stolen my life's work and was about to cash in on her carefully planned fraud. She had no idea that she was walking into the most expensive trap of her life. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know that Brittany Hayes was a thief and a fraud, and she would spend the next decade paying me back for the privilege of trying to destroy me. Justice was coming, and it was going to cost her everything. The next morning, I positioned myself across the street from my own house, sitting in my car with a clear view of the front entrance. Patricia had arranged for a private investigator to document everything that happened during Brittany's fraudulent house showing. At exactly 2 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. I watched as Brittany emerged, wearing an expensive dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with money stolen from my accounts. She was followed by a well-dressed couple in their 50s and a woman carrying a real estate portfolio. The buyers and their agent, I called Patricia. They're here. The recording equipment is in place. We'll have audio and video of everything that happens inside. What about the legal documents? The moment Brittany shows those forged power of attorney papers as proof of ownership, she'll be committing felony fraud in front of witnesses. I watched Brittany unlock my front door with keys she had no right to possess and welcome the potential buyers into my home. My phone buzzed with a text from the investigator. She's giving them a full tour, acting like she's lived here for years. Claims her elderly mother-in-law moved to assisted living. Assisted living. Brittany was telling people I was senile and had been moved to a care facility. She was rewriting history to make her theft seem legitimate. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Patricia, and she sounded grim. Eleanor, you need to hear this recording. She played me audio from inside my house. Brittany's voice was clear as she spoke to the potential buyers. My mother-in-law Eleanor developed severe dementia over the past year. It became unsafe for her to live alone in such a large house. My husband and I made the difficult decision to move her to a specialized care facility. That must have been hard, the female buyer responded sympathetically. It was heartbreaking. But Eleanor signed over power of attorney to me so I could handle her affairs. She wanted the house to go to someone who would love it the way she did. She sounds like a wonderful woman. She was. She is. The dementia has just changed her so much. I gripped my phone so tightly, my knuckles went white. Brittany was not only stealing my house, she was destroying my reputation, telling strangers that I was mentally incompetent. The recording continued. The asking price is $1.5 million, which is below market value. Eleanor wanted a quick sale so the proceeds could go toward her care. Why such a rush? The male buyer asked. The care facility is expensive, and Eleanor's other assets are tied up in probate. We need the liquidity. Probate. Brittany was claiming my assets were in probate, implying that I was either dead or legally incapacitated. Do you have the legal documentation showing your power of attorney? Of course. Right here. I could hear papers rustling as Brittany showed them the forged documents. This looks like everything we need, the buyer's agent said. My clients are very interested. Could we move quickly on this? How quickly? Brittany asked. Cash offer, closing within 2 weeks. Perfect. Eleanor would have wanted that. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Brittany spinning elaborate lies about my fictional mental deterioration and her supposed devotion to caring for me. When the buyers left, Brittany locked up my house and drove away, probably to celebrate her impending payday. I sat in my car, shaking with rage. It wasn't enough for Brittany to steal my house. She had to destroy my reputation in the process, painting me as a confused old woman who couldn't take care of herself. That evening, Patricia called with more disturbing news. Eleanor, our investigator, followed Brittany after the house showing. She went straight to the bank. What happened at the bank? She tried to access your investment accounts using the forged power of attorney. The bank manager was suspicious and asked for additional documentation. What kind of documentation? Medical records proving your incapacity, death certificates, proof of her legal authority to make financial decisions on your behalf. Please tell me she doesn't have those. She doesn't have them yet. But Eleanor, she told the bank manager she'd return tomorrow with everything they needed. My blood ran cold. Patricia, what medical records could she possibly get? I don't know, but if she's willing to forge power of attorney documents, she might be willing to forge medical records too. Or she might try to have me declared mentally incompetent. Eleanor, there's something else. Our investigator discovered that Brittany has been researching guardianship laws. Guardianship laws? If she could convince a court that you're mentally incapacitated, she could be appointed as your legal guardian. That would give her control over all your assets legitimately. I realized with horror that Brittany's plan was even more sophisticated than I'd thought. She wasn't just trying to steal my money. She was trying to have me declared legally incompetent so she could control my life completely. Patricia, we need to move faster. If she manages to convince anyone that I'm mentally incompetent, Eleanor, calm down. We have evidence of her fraud. But you're right. We need to act before she can do more damage. What's our next move? Tomorrow, when she brings those forged medical records to the bank, we'll be waiting. Bank fraud is a federal crime. The FBI will be very interested in Brittany's activities. What about the house sale? If the buyers submit an offer based on fraudulent documentation, they'll be witnesses to the crime. Their testimony will be crucial in court. I spent that night in my hotel room thinking about the full scope of Brittany's plan. She hadn't just married my son for money. She had been planning to steal my entire life from the beginning. The next morning brought news that made my blood boil. Patricia called at 8 a.m. Eleanor, Brittany just submitted an application to have you declared mentally incompetent. What? She filed papers with the court claiming you're suffering from severe dementia and can't make rational decisions about your finances or living situation. Based on what evidence? She claims you've been acting erratically, forgetting important things, and making irrational financial decisions. She's requesting an emergency hearing to have herself appointed as your guardian. Patricia, this is insane. I'm sitting here having a perfectly rational conversation with you. I know, Eleanor. But if Brittany can convince a judge that you're incompetent, she won't need to forge documents anymore. She'll have legal authority to do whatever she wants with your assets. When is the hearing? She's asking for an emergency hearing within 48 hours, claiming that you're in immediate danger due to your mental state. I felt the walls closing in around me. Brittany was moving on multiple fronts: the house sale, the bank fraud, and now a legal guardianship petition. If any one of these succeeded, she'd have access to my fortune. Patricia, we need to stop her today. Eleanor, the bank appointment is at 2 p.m. That's when we'll have her on federal fraud charges. But we need to be careful. If this goes wrong, she could claim that our interference proves you're mentally unstable. What do you mean? If a confused old woman with dementia suddenly shows up with lawyers and investigators, it could look like elder abuse in reverse. Like people are taking advantage of your confusion to make false accusations against your loving daughter-in-law. Brittany had thought of everything. She had created a narrative where any resistance from me would be evidence of my mental incompetence. But she had made one crucial mistake. She didn't know about the theft deterrent clauses Charles had built into our properties. Clauses that would activate the moment she tried to complete any fraudulent transaction. Patricia, let her go to the bank. Let her try to access my accounts. Let her bring the buyers to sign papers for the house. Eleanor, are you sure? Once she completes these transactions, she won't complete them. But she'll get close enough to trigger the legal protections, and she'll do it in front of witnesses who can testify about her fraud. You want to let her hang herself. I want her to discover that trying to steal from Charles Blackwood's widow was the most expensive mistake of her miserable life. That afternoon, I watched from across the street as Brittany returned to the bank with a folder full of what I assumed were forged medical documents. She walked in looking confident and emerged 30 minutes later looking confused and upset. My phone rang immediately. It was Patricia. Eleanor, it's done. The moment Brittany tried to use those forged documents to access your accounts, the theft deterrent clauses were fully activated. What happens now? She's now liable for triple damages on all the assets she attempted to steal. Based on today's actions alone, she owes you over $1 million. And the criminal charges? The FBI is already preparing arrest warrants. They'll move as soon as she attempts the house sale tomorrow. Tomorrow? The buyers are coming to sign the purchase agreement at 10 a.m. Brittany scheduled the signing at your house. I smiled grimly. Brittany was going to attempt to sell my house, in my house, using forged documents, in front of multiple witnesses. She was about to hand me the most satisfying victory of my 72 years. And the beautiful part was, she still had no idea what was coming. That evening, I received an unexpected phone call from Michael. Mom, I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? Of course, honey, what's wrong? I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you meet me at that diner on Main Street? 30 minutes later, I sat across from my son in a corner booth, studying his worried expression. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about Brittany and the power of attorney documents. What about them? I asked Brittany to show me the papers. She got really defensive and said I didn't need to see them, that it was just boring legal stuff. That didn't seem strange to you? It did, actually. And then I started noticing other things. Like what? Like how she's been asking a lot of questions about your assets lately, about the house, the rental properties, your investment accounts. I tried to tell you that, Michael. I know. I thought you were being paranoid. But then today, Brittany told me you'd been moved to an assisted living facility. I stared at him. She told you what? She said you'd developed dementia and had to be placed in specialized care. She said that's why I shouldn't try to contact you directly. Michael, I'm sitting right here, having a completely rational conversation with you. Do I seem like someone with dementia? No, you don't. That's what made me suspicious. Well, what else has she told you? She said the house needed to be sold to pay for your care. She said you wanted her to handle everything because you trusted her more than the lawyers. I felt a surge of anger. Brittany had been manipulating my son just as thoroughly as she'd been manipulating everyone else. Michael, your wife is trying to steal my entire estate. She's forged legal documents, lied to real estate agents, and attempted bank fraud. Mom, those are serious accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts. And tomorrow, when she tries to sell my house using forged documents, she's going to be arrested. Michael's face went pale. Arrested? For fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and attempted theft. She's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Mom, there has to be some mistake. The only mistake was yours, Michael. You married a criminal and refused to see what she was doing to our family. But I love her. You love the woman you thought she was. The woman she actually is has been planning to steal everything we own since the day she met you. Michael was quiet for a long time, processing what I'd told him. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, Brittany is going to attempt to complete the sale of my house. She's arranged for the buyers to sign the purchase agreement at 10 a.m. And then the FBI is going to arrest her for fraud. The buyers will witness her attempting to sell property she doesn't own using forged documents. The FBI? Bank fraud is a federal crime, Michael. Brittany crossed that line when she tried to access my investment accounts today. Mom, what's going to happen to me? I'm married to her. People will think I was involved. I looked at my son, my only child, who had been deceived just as thoroughly as I had been. Michael, that depends on you. Did you know about the forged documents? No, I swear I didn't. Did you know she was planning to sell the house? She mentioned it, but she said it was your idea. Did you benefit from any of the money she stole? What money? I pulled out bank statements Patricia had prepared. Brittany has been transferring money from my accounts to joint accounts she opened with you. You've been spending stolen money for months. Michael studied the statements, his face growing more horrified with each page. I didn't know. She told me she'd gotten a promotion at work. She said that's where the extra money was coming from. Where does she work? She's a dental assistant at Dr. Peterson's office. Michael, dental assistants don't make enough money to buy the expensive clothes and jewelry Brittany's been wearing. Oh my God. Mom, what do I do? You divorce her, immediately, before you're charged as an accessory to her crimes. But what if I really do love her? Then you love a woman who was willing to steal your inheritance and destroy your relationship with your mother to get what she wanted. Michael put his head in his hands. I can't believe I was so blind. Brittany is very good at manipulation, Michael. She fooled me for 2 years, too. What can I do to make this right? You can be there tomorrow when she's arrested. You can see for yourself what kind of person you married. And then you can decide whether you want to be married to a convicted felon. Will you forgive me for not believing you? I reached across the table and took my son's hand. You're my child, Michael. I'll always forgive you. But you need to learn from this mistake. I will, Mom. I promise. As I drove back to my hotel that night, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that my son was finally seeing the truth about Brittany, and sadness that it had taken so long for him to believe me. But tomorrow would bring complete vindication. Tomorrow, Brittany Hayes would learn that trying to steal from Eleanor Blackwood was the most expensive mistake she'd ever make. And everyone who witnessed her arrest would know exactly what kind of person she really was. The trap was set. The bait was taken. All that remained was watching Brittany destroy herself with her own greed. At 9:30 a.m., I parked across the street from my house and watched the final act of Brittany's downfall begin. Patricia sat beside me, along with Detective Sarah Martinez from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. In unmarked cars around the block, more federal agents waited for the signal to move in. Eleanor, are you ready for this? Patricia asked. I've been ready since the moment she locked me out of my own house. At exactly 10 a.m., the buyers arrived in their Mercedes, followed by their real estate agent in a BMW. They walked up to my front door like they were about to purchase their dream home. 5 minutes later, Brittany pulled into the driveway in a car I'd never seen before, a brand new Lexus that probably cost $60,000. Where did she get the money for that car? I asked Patricia. Probably from your investment accounts. We'll add it to the list of stolen assets. I watched Brittany emerge from the Lexus wearing a designer suit and carrying a leather briefcase. She looked like a successful real estate professional, not a thief about to be arrested for fraud. She greeted the buyers warmly and unlocked my front door with keys she had no right to possess. Detective Martinez spoke into her radio. All units, the suspects are inside the target location. Wait for my signal. For 20 minutes, we monitored the audio from inside my house as Brittany conducted her fraudulent sale. As you can see, Eleanor maintained this house beautifully. Brittany's voice came through the speakers. She was such a wonderful woman before the dementia took hold. It must be difficult seeing your mother-in-law deteriorate like that, the female buyer said sympathetically. Heartbreaking. But she's in good hands now at Sunset Manor. The staff there specializes in advanced dementia care. I gripped my phone. Sunset Manor was a real assisted living facility across town. Brittany had done her research to make her lies more convincing. The legal documentation you provided shows you have full power of attorney? The buyer's agent asked. Complete authority over all of Eleanor's assets. She signed everything over to me when she realized she could no longer make rational decisions. And the price of $1.5 million is firm? Eleanor specifically requested a below-market sale. She didn't want the house sitting empty while she needed care. Detective Martinez leaned forward. She's about to present the forged documents. That's when we move. Inside the house, I could hear papers rustling as Brittany showed the buyers the fake power of attorney documents. Everything appears to be in order, the buyer's agent said. My clients are prepared to sign the purchase agreement. Wonderful. Eleanor will be so pleased. That's when I had heard enough. Detective Martinez, I want to be there when you arrest her. Mrs. Blackwood, that's not standard procedure. This woman humiliated me by locking me out of my own house. I want her to see my face when she realizes what she's done to herself. Patricia nodded. Eleanor has every right to be present. This is her home, and she's the victim of these crimes. Detective Martinez considered for a moment. All right, but you stay back and let us handle the arrest. We walked across the street as backup units moved into position around my house. I used my spare key, the one Brittany didn't know about, to unlock the front door. The sound of the door opening interrupted the conversation in my living room. Excuse me, Brittany's voice called out. This is a private meeting. I stepped into my own living room, followed by Detective Martinez and 2 other FBI agents. The look on Brittany's face was priceless. Her confident smile vanished instantly, replaced by shock and then panic. Eleanor? What are you doing here? I live here, Brittany. This is my house. The buyers and their agent looked confused. Ma'am, we were told you were in assisted living, the male buyer said. I've never been in assisted living. I'm in perfect health, both mentally and physically. But Mrs. Hayes said you had dementia. Mrs. Hayes has been lying to you. She forged legal documents to try to steal my house. Detective Martinez stepped forward, showing her badge. FBI. Everyone please remain calm. Brittany's face went white. There's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Detective Martinez said, is your belief that you could commit federal fraud without consequences. Brittany Hayes, you're under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The buyers stared in shock as Detective Martinez began reading Brittany her rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is insane, Brittany screamed. Eleanor, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. I looked directly into her eyes. The only thing I'm going to tell them is how you locked me out of my own house and tried to steal my entire estate. But the power of attorney documents are forgeries, very good forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. The real estate agent pulled out her phone. I need to call my office. My clients have been fraudulently induced into attempting to purchase stolen property. Ma'am, please don't leave, Detective Martinez said. We'll need statements from all of you as witnesses to this attempted fraud. As the handcuffs clicked around Brittany's wrists, she made one last desperate attempt to control the situation. Eleanor, you know you signed those documents. You're just confused because of your age. I'm 72, not senile, and I've never been more clear about anything in my life. But what about Michael? He'll lose everything if you press charges against me. Michael will be fine. He's filing for divorce this afternoon. Brittany's face crumpled as she realized her husband wasn't going to save her. Eleanor, please. I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. You locked me out of my own house. You tried to sell my home to strangers. You attempted to steal my entire life savings. What part of that wasn't meant to hurt me? We needed money. Michael's business has been struggling, and I thought, you thought you'd steal from his mother instead of getting a job or living within your means. Detective Martinez interrupted. Mrs. Hayes, I advise you to stop talking without an attorney present. As they led Brittany away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time. Eleanor, this isn't over. I'll fight these charges. I'll prove those documents are real. Good luck with that, I called after her. You're going to need more than luck where you're going. After Brittany was removed from my house, Detective Martinez sat down with the buyers and their agent to take statements. Ma'am, we had no idea we were being shown stolen property, the female buyer said. Mrs. Hayes seemed so genuine about caring for her mother-in-law. She's very good at manipulation, I replied. She fooled my son for 2 years. What happens now? The real estate agent asked. Now, Mrs. Hayes faces federal charges that could result in 10 to 15 years in prison, Detective Martinez explained. The attempted sale of this property was just one part of a larger fraud scheme. Will we face any charges for attempting to buy stolen property? Not if you cooperate with our investigation. You were victims of fraud just as much as Mrs. Blackwood was. After giving their statements, the buyers and their agent left, probably grateful they hadn't completed the purchase. Patricia arrived just as the FBI was finishing their evidence collection. Eleanor, how do you feel? Relieved, satisfied, and ready to make sure Brittany pays for every dollar she tried to steal. About that, the theft deterrent clauses in your property deeds have been fully activated. Brittany now owes you triple damages for attempted theft. How much? Based on the total value of assets she attempted to steal, plus the federal fraud penalties, she's liable for approximately $2 million in damages. $2 million. Brittany had tried to steal my fortune and ended up owing me twice what she'd attempted to take. What are the chances she can actually pay that? 0. She'll probably declare bankruptcy, but the criminal charges will remain. And prison time? With the federal charges, the forged documents, and the attempted theft of multiple properties, she's looking at 8 to 12 years minimum. Detective Martinez rejoined us. Mrs. Blackwood, I need to ask you about something we found during our search of Mrs. Hayes's belongings. What did you find? Evidence that she's been planning this fraud for over a year. We found detailed notes about your assets, research into guardianship laws, and correspondence with other people about how to manipulate elderly relatives. Other people? It appears Mrs. Hayes has been involved in similar schemes before. You weren't her first victim. I stared at Detective Martinez. You're telling me Brittany is a professional scammer? We believe so. We're investigating her background more thoroughly, but it appears she targets wealthy, older individuals, often through romantic relationships with their children. The full scope of Brittany's deception hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just married my son for money. She was a career criminal who specialized in stealing from families like mine. Detective, what about Michael? Did he know? Based on our investigation, your son appears to be another victim. We found no evidence he was aware of his wife's criminal activities. Thank God. That evening, Michael came to my house where I belonged, looking devastated. Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what kind of person she was. I know, honey. She fooled both of us. I filed for divorce this afternoon, and I closed all the joint accounts she had access to. That was smart. Mom, the FBI told me Brittany might have done this before, to other families. Detective Martinez told me the same thing. How could I have been so stupid? I looked at my son, who had aged 10 years in one day. Michael, predators like Brittany are experts at manipulation. She told you exactly what you wanted to hear. But I should have listened to you. Yes, you should have. But you're listening now, and that's what matters. We sat together in my living room, the same room where Brittany had tried to sell my house to strangers just hours earlier. What happens now? Michael asked. Now, we rebuild. You rebuild your life without a criminal wife, and I continue living in my home where I belong. Will you forgive me for not believing you? I already have. But Michael, you need to promise me something. Anything. If you ever get involved with someone else, you'll listen if I have concerns. I promise, Mom. I'll never ignore your instincts again. As Michael left that evening, I stood in my doorway, my own doorway with my own keys, and reflected on what had happened. Brittany Hayes had tried to steal my house, my money, and my independence. Instead, she'd given me the most satisfying victory of my 72 years. She was facing a decade in prison and owed me $2 million she could never repay. Meanwhile, I was back in my home, financially secure and closer to my son than we'd been in years. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting criminals destroy themselves with their own greed, and Brittany Hayes had certainly done that. The next morning brought news that made my victory even sweeter. Detective Martinez called at 8 a.m. with an update on Brittany's situation. "Mrs. Blackwood, I thought you'd want to know. Mrs. Hayes has been denied bail." "Why?" "The judge considered her a flight risk. We found evidence that she was planning to leave the country once she liquidated your assets." "Leave the country?" "She had applications for expedited passports and had researched non-extradition treaties with several foreign countries." I realized that Brittany's plan had been even more sinister than I'd imagined. She wasn't just trying to steal my money. She was planning to disappear entirely, leaving Michael behind to face the consequences. "Detective, what else did you find?" "Bank records showing she's been systematically draining joint accounts she opened with your son. She transferred over $200,000 to offshore accounts." $200,000? Money she took from your investment accounts using the forged power of attorney. Your son had no idea the money was stolen. I felt a surge of anger. Brittany had not only tried to steal from me, she'd made my son an unwitting accomplice by using stolen money to fund their lifestyle. Is Michael in any legal trouble? No. Our investigation shows he genuinely believed the money came from his wife's supposed promotion. He's actually helped us identify purchases and expenditures that can be traced back to your stolen funds. What kind of purchases? The new car, expensive jewelry, designer clothes, a vacation to Europe last month. She spent your money like it was her own. Because she thought it would be her own once she had me declared incompetent. Exactly. Mrs. Blackwood, I have to say, your husband's legal protections were brilliant. Without those theft deterrent clauses, recovering your assets would have been much more difficult. Charles always said the best defense was a good defense. Well, his defense just put a career criminal in prison for the next decade. After hanging up with Detective Martinez, I called Patricia to discuss the civil aspects of Brittany's crimes. "Eleanor, the news gets better. Brittany's assets have been frozen by court order." "What assets?" "I thought she didn't have any money of her own." "She doesn't. But the court has seized the car she bought with your stolen funds, the jewelry, the designer clothes, everything she purchased with money taken from your accounts. What happens to those items? They'll be sold at auction, and the proceeds will be applied to the damages she owes you. How much will that recover? Maybe $50,000. It's not much compared to what she tried to steal, but it's something. What about the rest of the money she owes me? She'll be required to make restitution as part of her sentence. Even if she can only pay a few dollars a month from prison, she'll be legally obligated to repay you for the rest of her life. The thought of Brittany working for pennies in prison, knowing that every cent she earned would go to me, was deeply satisfying. That afternoon, I had another unexpected visitor. Michael arrived with a box of items. "Mom, I found these in our house. I thought you should have them back." I opened the box to find jewelry that had belonged to my mother, photo albums from my marriage to Charles, and other personal items I hadn't realized were missing. "She took these from my house?" "They were in her closet. I think she was planning to sell them." I held up my mother's pearl necklace, the one I'd worn to my wedding, the one Charles had always said made me look beautiful. "Michael, she was stealing my memories." "I know. When I found these, I realized how much I didn't know about the woman I married." "What else did you find?" "Letters from other men she was involved with before me. Men who sound a lot like me, middle-aged, recently divorced, with wealthy parents." I looked at my son's heartbroken expression. "Michael, you weren't her first target. I know there were at least 3 other men over the past 5 years. All of them ended up losing money or property to her. Did you contact them?" I gave their information to Detective Martinez. "They're building a case that shows Brittany's pattern of fraud. How are you dealing with all this?" "I'm angry, humiliated. But mostly, I'm grateful that you stopped her before she could do more damage. What will you do now? Rebuild my life, my business, my relationship with you. Michael, your business is struggling. It has been for months. That's why Brittany's supposed promotion and extra income seemed so convenient. I thought my wife was helping support us. I didn't realize she was stealing from my mother. I studied my son's face, seeing the shame and regret there. Michael, how much money does your business need? Mom, I can't ask you for money, not after what happened. You're not asking, I'm offering. How much? About $50,000 to get current on all the bills and inventory. Consider it a loan, no interest, reasonable payments. Mom, I don't deserve your help. You deserve a chance to rebuild your life after being deceived by a criminal. That's different from deserving a handout. I'll pay back every penny. I know you will. That evening, I sat in my living room reading the local newspaper's coverage of Brittany's arrest. The headline read, "Local woman charged with elaborate elder fraud scheme." The article detailed how Brittany had attempted to steal approximately $4 million in assets from a local widow through forged legal documents and fraudulent guardianship proceedings. $4 million. The newspaper had calculated the full value of everything Brittany had tried to take from me. My phone rang constantly that day with calls from neighbors, friends, and acquaintances who had seen the news coverage. Eleanor, I can't believe that sweet girl was trying to rob you. Eleanor, you must have been terrified when she locked you out of your house. Eleanor, how did you figure out what she was doing? I answered each call graciously, but I didn't reveal the full extent of Charles's legal protections. Some secrets were better kept private. The most satisfying call came from Mrs. Henderson, who lived 3 houses down. Eleanor, I need to apologize to you. For what, Margaret? Last week, when I saw you at the grocery store, you mentioned having trouble with your daughter-in-law. I thought you were just being dramatic. And now? Now I realize you were trying to tell people what was happening, and we didn't take you seriously. It's all right, Margaret. Brittany was very convincing. Is it true she tried to have you declared incompetent? Yes. She filed papers claiming I had dementia and couldn't make rational decisions. That's horrible. You're one of the sharpest women I know. Thank you for saying that. Eleanor, if there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask. As I hung up the phone, I realized that Brittany's public exposure had accomplished something I hadn't expected. It had shown everyone in town that I was far from the helpless old woman she had tried to paint me as. I was Eleanor Blackwood, and I was not someone to be underestimated. The next day brought the final piece of news that completed my satisfaction. Detective Martinez called with an update from the prosecutor's office. Mrs. Blackwood, the district attorney, has decided to pursue the maximum charges against Mrs. Hayes. What does that mean? With the federal charges, the state charges, and the evidence of previous similar crimes, she's looking at 12 to 15 years in prison. And the restitution? She'll be required to pay back every penny she stole, plus the damages from the theft deterrent clauses. The total is now calculated at $2.3 million. $2.3 million. Brittany would spend the next decade in prison and the rest of her life paying me back for trying to steal from me. Mrs. Blackwood, I have to ask, how does it feel to know that someone who tried to destroy you is now facing complete destruction themselves? I thought about that question for a moment. Detective, it feels like justice, not revenge, not cruelty, just appropriate consequences for someone's choices. Your husband must have been quite a lawyer to build protections this comprehensive. He was, and he taught me that the best way to deal with predators is to make sure there are consequences when they attack. Well, Mrs. Hayes certainly learned about consequences. As I hung up the phone, I walked through my house where I belonged, where I would stay for as long as I chose. Brittany Hayes had tried to steal my home, my money, and my independence. Instead, she had given me the most complete victory imaginable. She was in prison, facing years of incarceration and a lifetime of debt. I was free, secure, and stronger than ever. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply watching someone destroy themselves with their own greed. And Brittany Hayes had certainly done that in spectacular fashion. 3 weeks after Brittany's arrest, the full scope of her destruction became clear. Patricia called me with news that exceeded even my most satisfying fantasies of revenge. "Eleanor, you're not going to believe what the FBI discovered." "What now?" "Brittany wasn't just targeting you. She's been running similar scams across 3 states for the past 7 years. "How many victims?" "At least 12 that they've identified so far. All wealthy, older individuals, all approached through romantic relationships with their children or grandchildren." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. 12 families? 12 families she's systematically robbed. The FBI estimates she's stolen over $6 million in total. $6 million. Brittany wasn't just an opportunistic thief. She was the leader of an organized criminal enterprise. "Eleanor, there's more. The other victims are filing a class action lawsuit against her. You're being asked to serve as the lead plaintiff." "What would that involve?" "Your case is the most documented and has the strongest evidence. The other victims want you to represent them in court because you're the one who actually caught her and stopped her." "What about Charles's legal protections? Will they apply to the other victims?" "No, unfortunately. Your husband's theft deterrent clauses were specific to your properties. The other families weren't as well protected." I thought about 11 other families who had been victimized by Brittany's schemes. Families who didn't have Charles's brilliant legal safeguards to protect them. "Patricia, I'll do it. If my case can help the other victims get justice, I want to be involved." "There's something else, Eleanor. The publicity from your case has led to 3 more victims coming forward. People who were too embarrassed to report what happened to them." "Too embarrassed?" They felt stupid for being fooled. But when they saw how sophisticated Brittany's operation was, they realized they weren't naive victims. They were targeted by a professional criminal. The next morning, I received a phone call that made my victory even sweeter. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is James Peterson from Peterson Dental Associates." "Yes? I'm calling about Brittany Hayes, who used to work for our practice." "What about her?" "We've been following the news about her arrest, and we need to ask you some questions." "What kind of questions?" "Mrs. Blackwood, we think Brittany may have been stealing from our practice as well." I wasn't surprised. A woman who would forge documents to steal a house probably wouldn't hesitate to embezzle from her employer. "What makes you think that?" "After her arrest, we did an audit of our accounts. We found discrepancies going back almost 2 years, missing cash payments, insurance claims that were processed but never deposited, patient billing irregularities." "How much money?" "About $40,000. "Have you contacted the FBI?" "We're meeting with Detective Martinez this afternoon." "But Mrs. Blackwood, we wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "If you hadn't caught her when you did, she probably would have kept stealing from us indefinitely." After Dr. Peterson hung up, I realized that stopping Brittany had protected not just me, but potentially dozens of future victims. That afternoon, Detective Martinez visited to update me on the expanding investigation. "Mrs. Blackwood, this case has become much larger than we initially thought." "How large?" "We're now investigating Brittany Hayes as the leader of an interstate fraud ring. She worked with accomplices in other states to identify and target wealthy victims." "Accomplices?" "At least 3 other people we've identified so far. One of them is a paralegal who helped create the forged legal documents. Another is a private investigator who researched potential victims' assets." I stared at Detective Martinez. "This was organized crime." "Exactly, and you were their biggest target. Your assets made you worth the most elaborate scheme they'd ever attempted." "What happens to the accomplices?" "They're being arrested as we speak. The paralegal is facing disbarment and prison time. The private investigator is losing his license and facing federal charges." "And Brittany?" "With the additional charges related to the organized crime aspect, she's now looking at 20 to 25 years in prison." 25 years. Brittany would be in her 50s when she was released, and she'd still owe me over $2 million. "Detective, what about restitution from the other victims' cases?" "That gets complicated. With multiple victims and limited assets, everyone will get a percentage of whatever can be recovered." "But Eleanor, your case is different." "How so?" "The theft deterrent clauses in your property deeds create a separate legal obligation. Brittany owes you damages regardless of what happens with the other victims. So I'm guaranteed to recover my money? You're guaranteed that she owes you the money. Whether she can ever pay it is another question. That evening, I received a call that surprised me. Mrs. Blackwood, this is Janet Morrison from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the Brittany Hayes case. What kind of interview? We're doing a special report on elder fraud, and your case represents the most successful example of someone fighting back against these criminals. I'm not sure I want to be on television. Mrs. Blackwood, your story could help other people recognize the warning signs of fraud before they become victims. I thought about the 12 families Brittany had already victimized, and the unknown number of future victims she might have targeted if I hadn't stopped her. All right. But I want to focus on helping people protect themselves, not on what happened to me personally. The interview aired 3 days later. I watched myself on television, sitting in my living room, explaining how Brittany had forged documents and tried to steal my house. Mrs. Blackwood, the reporter asked, what advice would you give to other people who suspect their relatives might be victims of similar fraud? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate it. Don't let anyone convince you that you're being paranoid or overprotective. What warning signs should people look for? Sudden changes in legal documents, new people having access to financial accounts, relatives being isolated from family members, and anyone who discourages transparency about financial matters. How did your late husband's legal protections help in this case? Charles built safeguards into our properties that automatically triggered penalties if anyone tried to steal them. But not everyone has those protections. The most important thing is to document everything and involve law enforcement as soon as fraud is suspected. The interview was seen by over 200,000 people in our viewing area. Within a week, I received dozens of calls and letters from people thanking me for speaking out. Mrs. Blackwood, your story helped me realize my son's girlfriend was trying to manipulate me into changing my will. Mrs. Blackwood, after seeing your interview, I hired a lawyer to review my estate planning. I discovered my nephew had been forging checks. Mrs. Blackwood, you gave me the courage to report my caregiver for stealing my jewelry. Each call reinforced my decision to speak publicly about Brittany's crimes. 6 months after Brittany's arrest, I attended her sentencing hearing. She sat at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the confident woman who had locked me out of my own house. Prison had aged her, and her expensive clothes had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Brittany stood and faced me. Mrs. Blackwood, I want to apologize for what I did to you and your family. I stared back at her without expression. I know my apology doesn't undo the damage I caused, but I want you to know that I recognize how wrong I was. Mrs. Hayes, the judge interrupted, are you prepared to make full restitution to your victims? Yes, Your Honor, I understand I owe Mrs. Blackwood $2.3 million, plus amounts to the other victims. And you understand that this obligation will continue for the rest of your life? I understand. Judge Harrison looked down at Brittany with disgust. Mrs. Hayes, you have committed some of the most callous crimes I've seen in 20 years on the bench. You didn't just steal money, you attempted to destroy families and leave elderly victims homeless and destitute. Yes, Your Honor. Your crimes were sophisticated, premeditated, and part of an organized conspiracy to defraud vulnerable people across multiple states. Brittany's head dropped. Therefore, I sentence you to 22 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution to all victims, and you are banned from any contact with elderly individuals outside of your own family. 22 years. Brittany would be 51 when she was released, and she'd spend the rest of her life paying back the money she'd stolen. As they led her away in shackles, Brittany turned back one last time. Mrs. Blackwood, I hope someday you can forgive me. I stood and looked directly at her. Brittany, I hope someday you understand the full extent of what you tried to take from me. I do understand. You tried to take my home, my independence, my relationship with my son, and my dignity. Those things are worth more than money. I know that now. No, you don't. If you understood that, you never would have tried to steal them in the first place. As Brittany was led away to begin her 22-year sentence, I felt a deep sense of completion. The woman who had tried to destroy my life was now facing the complete destruction of her own. She would spend the next 2 decades in prison, and the rest of her life paying me back for the privilege of trying to steal from me. Meanwhile, I was free, secure in my own home, with my relationship with Michael stronger than ever. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting criminals face the full consequences of their choices. And Brittany Hayes was certainly facing those consequences now. Justice, it turned out, was far more satisfying than revenge could ever be. 1 year after Brittany's sentencing, I received a letter that completed my satisfaction. It was from Brittany, written from federal prison. Dear Mrs. Blackwood, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I felt compelled to write this letter on the first anniversary of my sentencing. I have spent the past year in prison thinking about what I did to you and the other families I victimized. I know that no apology can undo the damage I caused, but I want you to know that I understand now what I couldn't understand before. You weren't just a wealthy woman I could steal from. You were a human being with feelings, relationships, and a life that I tried to destroy for my own selfish purposes. I understand now that when I locked you out of your house, I wasn't just taking your property. I was taking away your sense of security and belonging. When I tried to have you declared mentally incompetent, I wasn't just stealing your money. I was trying to steal your dignity and independence. When I lied to Michael about your mental state, I wasn't just protecting my scheme. I was trying to destroy your relationship with your son. I have learned that the things I tried to take from you were worth more than all the money in the world. I am working in the prison laundry for $1.20 per hour. After deductions for room and board, I earn about $50 per month. Every penny goes toward the restitution I owe you and the other victims. At this rate, it will take me several lifetimes to pay back what I stole. But I will keep working, and I will keep paying for as long as I live. I know this doesn't matter to you, but I have also been attending counseling sessions to understand why I became the kind of person who could hurt innocent people. I learned that I spent so many years being jealous of people who had what I wanted that I convinced myself they didn't deserve it. I told myself that wealthy people like you were just lucky and that stealing from you was somehow justified. I was wrong about everything. You weren't lucky. You were smart, hard-working, and married to a man who loved you enough to protect you even after his death. You didn't owe me anything, and I had no right to take anything from you. I destroyed my own life because I was too greedy and too proud to build something honest for myself. Mrs. Blackwood, I know you will never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. But I want you to know that your strength in fighting back against me probably saved other families from going through what you went through. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have kept stealing from people until someone else found the courage to fight back. You didn't just save yourself, you saved my future victims. I hope that gives you some satisfaction. I also want you to know that Michael visits me once a month. He doesn't do it for me. He does it to remind himself of what happens when people make the kind of choices I made. He talks about you often. He tells me how proud he is of the way you handled everything, and how grateful he is that you saved him from being married to a criminal for the rest of his life. Michael has built a good life for himself. His business is thriving, and he's dating a woman who seems to make him happy. A woman with her own career and her own money, who doesn't need to steal from anyone. I think he learned from my mistakes even more than I did. Mrs. Blackwood, I have 21 more years to serve in prison. 21 years to think about what I did, and to try to become a better person. I don't expect you to care about my redemption, but I wanted you to know that I am working every day to understand and change the kind of person I was when I hurt you. I hope you are happy and healthy in your beautiful home, surrounded by people who love and respect you. You deserve all the peace and security I tried to steal from you. Sincerely, Brittany Hayes, Federal Prisoner, 47291. I read the letter twice, then put it down and thought about everything that had happened. Brittany was right about one thing. I was happy and healthy in my beautiful home. My relationship with Michael was stronger than ever. His new girlfriend, Sarah, was a doctor who earned her own living and treated me with genuine respect. My catering business had grown significantly after the publicity from Brittany's case. People wanted to support a woman who had fought back against fraud and won. I had also become something of a local celebrity. The senior center asked me to speak about fraud prevention. The women's club invited me to discuss legal protections for widows. Even the police department asked me to help train officers on elder abuse cases. At 73, I was busier and more fulfilled than I'd been in years. As for Brittany's letter, I felt neither anger nor satisfaction when I read it. I felt nothing at all. She had become completely irrelevant to my life. The woman who had once tried to destroy me was now just a prisoner sending letters from jail, working for $120 per hour to pay back money she'd never be able to repay. Meanwhile, I was living my best life in the home she'd tried to steal, surrounded by people who valued and respected me. That evening, I called Patricia to tell her about Brittany's letter. "Eleanor, what are you going to do with it?" "Nothing. File it away with the other legal documents, I suppose. You're not going to respond?" "What would be the point? Brittany's apology doesn't change anything. She's still in prison for 21 more years, and she still owes me over $2 million. How do you feel about her apparent remorse?" "I think she's sorry she got caught, sorry she's in prison, and sorry she destroyed her own life. I'm not sure she's actually sorry for what she did to me." "What makes you say that?" "Because if she was truly sorry, she would have stopped after the first family she victimized. She wouldn't have kept targeting elderly people for 7 years. You think the remorse is just another manipulation?" "I think Brittany has learned to say what people want to hear. That's what made her such an effective fraud in the first place." "Well, manipulative or not, she's still serving 22 years and paying restitution for the rest of her life. And I'm still living in my own home, financially secure, and closer to my son than ever. I'd say the final score is pretty clear." 6 months later, I received another letter from Brittany. This one was shorter. "Dear Mrs. Blackwood, I wanted to let you know that I have been assigned to teach literacy classes to other inmates. It's volunteer work that doesn't pay anything, but it gives me a sense of purpose. One of my students is an elderly woman who was imprisoned for financial crimes similar to mine. When she found out what I had done, she told me something I wanted to share with you. She said, 'The people we hurt don't want our apologies. They want their lives back.' I realize now that no matter what I write in these letters, I can never give you back the months of stress and fear I caused you. I can never undo the damage I did to your relationship with Michael. I can never repay you for the violation of having a criminal in your home. I am going to stop writing to you now, not because I don't think about what I did, but because I understand that my letters are about making me feel better, not about helping you heal. I hope you have a wonderful life in the home where you belong. Brittany Hayes." I read this letter once and then threw it away. Brittany was right. I didn't want her apologies. I wanted my life back. And I had gotten it. I was Eleanor Blackwood, 73 years old, living independently in my own home, financially secure, and surrounded by people who loved and respected me. The woman who had tried to steal everything from me was serving 22 years in prison and would spend the rest of her life paying me back. That wasn't revenge. That was justice. And justice was all I had ever wanted. 5 years after Brittany's sentencing, I was sitting in my garden when Patricia called with news that brought everything full circle. "Eleanor, I just received notification from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Brittany Hayes died in custody last night." I set down my tea and processed this information without emotion. "How did she die?" "Heart attack, apparently. She was only 34 years old." Brittany had died in prison, 7 years younger than my son, 17 years into a 22-year sentence. What happens to the restitution she still owed me? Her obligation dies with her. But Eleanor, she'd only paid back about $3,000 total over 5 years. $3,000 out of $2.3 million. Brittany had worked in prison laundry for 5 years and had barely made a dent in what she owed me. "How do you feel about this news?" Patricia asked. I thought about that question for a moment, searching my heart for any feeling of satisfaction or loss. "I feel nothing, Patricia. Brittany Hayes became irrelevant to my life the moment she was sentenced. No sense of justice being served? Justice was served 5 years ago when she was convicted. Her death doesn't add to that or take away from it. That afternoon, Michael came to visit, having heard the news. "Mom, how are you processing this?" "The same way I've processed everything else about Brittany, by focusing on my own life instead of hers. I have to admit, I feel relieved, I guess." "Why relieved?" "Because now I know she can never hurt our family again. And she can never hurt anyone else's family either." Michael was right. Brittany's death meant no future victims, no possibility of parole, no chance she would ever again lock an elderly person out of their own home. "Michael, what kind of life have you built for yourself?" "A good one, Mom. Sarah and I are engaged. My business is thriving. I own my own home, earned with honest work." "And you learned something from the Brittany experience?" "I learned to trust your judgment about people. I learned that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. And I learned that real love doesn't require stealing from family members." That evening, I walked through my house, the house Brittany had tried to steal, where I still lived independently at 77 years old. In my study, I kept a framed photo of Charles and me on our wedding day. Next to it was a folder containing all the legal documents from Brittany's case. I opened the folder and looked through the evidence of her crimes one last time. The forged power of attorney documents, the bank fraud records, the restitution orders she would never complete. Then I walked to my fireplace and burned everything except the court's final judgment. Brittany Hayes was dead, and I was done carrying any part of her story with me. I was Eleanor Blackwood, 77 years old, living in the house my husband had protected for me, surrounded by family who respected me and friends who valued me. I had won completely, and my victory had nothing to do with Brittany's fate. It had everything to do with the life I had built for myself after she tried to destroy it. 2 months later, I received a visit from Detective Martinez, now retired from the FBI. "Mrs. Blackwood, I wanted to let you know that the Brittany Hayes case has been used to train federal agents in elder fraud investigation." "How so?" "Your husband's legal protections and your methodical documentation of the crimes have become a model for how to build cases against financial predators. I'm glad something good came out of it. More than you know. The training program based on your case has led to the arrest and conviction of 12 other fraud rings targeting elderly victims." 12 other rings? "Your case showed us what to look for and how these criminals operate. We've protected hundreds of potential victims because of what you taught us. I thought about hundreds of families who would never experience what I went through. Families who would never have to fight to keep their homes and their independence. Detective Martinez, that's the best news you could have given me. Mrs. Blackwood, you should be proud. You didn't just save yourself. You helped save people you'll never meet." After he left, I realized that my victory over Brittany had extended far beyond my own life. By fighting back against her fraud, I had created protections for other families facing similar threats. That was a legacy worth having. 3 years later, at 80 years old, I published a book titled "Never Underestimate a Widow: How I Outsmarted a Professional Con Artist and Saved My Life." The book became a bestseller in the personal finance and true crime categories. More importantly, it became a resource for families trying to protect elderly relatives from fraud. I donated all the proceeds to organizations that help elderly victims of financial crimes. On the 10th anniversary of Brittany's arrest, I was invited to speak at a national conference on elder abuse prevention. "Ladies and gentlemen," I told the audience of law enforcement officers, social workers, and family advocates, "the most important thing you can do to protect elderly people is to take them seriously when they say something is wrong. If I had been dismissed as a confused old woman when Brittany locked me out of my house, she might have succeeded in stealing everything I owned. But because I had the resources and knowledge to fight back, and because I had professionals who believed me, justice was served. Not every elderly person has those advantages. That's why your work is so important." After my speech, a young woman approached me. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm a social worker specializing in elder abuse cases. Your story has inspired me to take these cases more seriously." "How so?" "I used to think financial abuse was just about money. but your book helped me understand that it's about stealing people's independence, dignity, and sense of security. That's exactly right. I've been more aggressive about investigating suspicious situations, and I've caught 3 fraud cases in the past year. Good for you. How many families did you protect? At least 6 that I know of. Potentially more if these criminals had continued operating. As I drove home from the conference, I reflected on the unexpected path my life had taken. What began as a devastating betrayal had become a platform for helping others, a source of meaning and purpose in my later years. Brittany Hayes had tried to steal my life. Instead, she had given me the most fulfilling chapter of it. At 82 years old, I still live independently in the house Charles protected for me. Michael and Sarah visit regularly with their 2 young children, who call me Grandma Eleanor, and love hearing stories about their grandfather's brilliant legal mind. My catering business evolved into a consulting firm that helps other small business owners protect their assets. My book continues to sell steady copies, helping families recognize and prevent financial fraud. I serve on the board of 3 organizations dedicated to elder rights and financial protection. And every morning, I wake up in my own bed, in my own house, grateful for the security and independence that Brittany Hayes tried to steal but could never truly take away. The woman who locked me out of my house is long dead. The woman she tried to destroy is thriving. That's not revenge. That's victory. And victory, I've learned, is the sweetest justice of all.